The door to this room just slowly opened.
Oh,
There's no one standing in the doorway. I just want to acknowledge that as our tradition of weird shit happening while recording this podcast.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It was me last time. It's you this time. This feels like a progression.
Let's do it, huh?
All right.
Let's do it. I guess I'm just leaving this door to my room open. Just like, hey, ghost, come on in. Just hover 2 inches off the floor and tap your stupid cane, you bastard.
Tap. Tap.
Hello and welcome to Flanagan's Wake, a Doof Media podcast that is stealing Mike Flanagan's bowler hat to see if he'll show up in my bedroom looking for it. My name is Scott Daly, and I am your host. And joining me, as always, my co-host, equipped with his fearless moral inventory, it's Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt? Why don't you go ahead and list everything you've ever done wrong right now? Go.
Well, in the course of the first podcast you and I did together, I had to lie to you a lot. So that was really painful. Both of us. Sorry.
I appreciate that. I forgive you.
Oh, okay. That was easy. That's it then.
That's it. That's the full list. Cool.
Yeah.
I thought for a brief second of having our discussion question be, please provide your fearless moral inventory. And I decided that maybe was crossing a few lines that we don't need to cross.
Please confess your sins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Write them down with you along with your address and social security number, and we'll treat them kindly, I promise.
Yeah, thank you.
This week on the show, we continue our journey through Mike Flanagan's 10-part series, The Haunting of Hill House. We're on episode 4, The Twin Thing. Luke is the focal point of this week's episode as we learn that his special connection with Nell leads them to feel what each other is feeling. And in the case of this week's episode, what Luke is feeling is rigor mortis. The death of his sister is something he is feeling acutely throughout the entire episode. Matt, what did you think of The Twin Thing?
I love this episode. Continue to enjoy the way we're building things up, and the thing that we keep doing over and over, which is making us really sympathize for whatever character is the one that we're focusing on, and making all the other characters seem like self-absorbed assholes. But then, like, now that we've gone through all the characters and I've come to appreciate the way the table has been set, it's really fun to just look at this episode and see all the ways in which Luke, despite the fact that while you're watching the episode, you very much side with Luke, you want the best for Luke, you empathize with Luke. After you finish the episode, you're able to step away from it and say, okay, Luke's being kind of an idiot here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, like, I totally agree with you that one of the things is, like, we get to see that opening scene between Luke and Steve from Luke's perspective, right? And we see what we assumed to be either just being on drugs or suffering withdrawal, like a junkie withdrawal from drugs, was not that at all. That's what Steve assumed it was, and we were in Steve's point of view, and we just kind of assumed it was too. And the reveal in this episode is that no, that is not what it was. Luke was telling the truth when he said he hasn't used, and he still hasn't used at the end of this episode. On the same time, like, we also do see through Luke's interaction with his friend in rehab what it's like when the person you love, respect, and care for continuously fucks you over, and what that feels like. And so, as much as I think you can walk out of this week's episode saying, man, Steve is such a fucking asshole, because indeed Steve is a huge fucking asshole in this episode, I think it allows both us and Luke to kind of realize, yeah, but, like, doesn't Luke kind of deserve it a little bit maybe? And that's that. I think that the general idea we've talked about in these last few episodes. In episode 2, we talked about Shirley and fixing things. In episode 3, we talked about Theo and this idea of building up walls and bricks. And here, I think the whole thing is about the idea of belief, what does it mean to believe someone? What does it mean to believe in someone? And the complicated, swirling nature of all of that, right? Because this is not an episode that says they should have been believing Luke the entire time, even though there are times throughout this episode which he is absolutely telling the truth. There's also points in this where the show makes it very clear that no, even if Steve was being an asshole, he was 100% correct about the person he was dismissing. And that is such a delightfully complicated, fucked up place to leave us that I just can't get enough of. I really love this episode.
Yeah, it forces us to think really hard about what it means to love someone who you don't trust. I think it's also really smart and effective that like the focal relationship in the episode is really, not between any of the siblings, but rather between Luke and Joey, this character who we've only just met in this episode for the first time.
Yeah.
And furthermore, the thing that we do with her is we basically have her betray and let him down in exactly the way that we have been told he has done to all of his family.
Yep.
Multiple times, perhaps.
Yeah.
Part of the protagonist's goggles is that we're not seeing that immediately, so it seems more distant and kind of theoretical. Whereas right now, Luke is suffering from this betrayal, but it's like, no, Luke, like he's done this exact thing, and it's this pattern, it's this cycle. It's difficult to escape from. Although, important thing about this episode, and I think a real win, one of the few things that leaves us with the sense of victory coming out of this episode is that despite everything Luke goes through in this episode, he does not use.
Yeah.
So,
no, I think you're right. I mean, I think we left the Theo episode last week like, I feel a little bit optimistic that at the end of the episode, Theo says, touch me.
Yeah.
I think we're supposed to take a little bit of optimism away from that. And yeah, I think in this episode, it is much more clear that like, despite it all, that Luke stays strong in that regard. And the show's not over yet, right? There's plenty of chances to not do that, but he was at his lowest. I mean, by the end of this episode, he's shoeless, jacketless, pacing around right in front of where all the junkies are on their are buying drugs on the corner, and doesn't break that entire time. And in fact, like I think the one thing that's really important, and we'll many things to say about the man in the bowler hat, the tall man, ghost, whatever, that is following him throughout the episode. I think it does actually mean something that at the very end of the episode, he turns around to face him. Like he has been constantly walking away from him. We see him creepily float right behind him, and he turns to face him. He stops running, essentially.
Yeah.
And that's when we get Liv, which we're going to have to parse that as well. But yeah, I mean, I think one thing I'm just loving overall about the show is just how kind of clear and obvious and like attached to the core structure of each episode is like this central main idea, the central image, like we said, like fixing bricks and now belief. Like it's very clear that the writers, when they were breaking these episodes, sat down and was like, this is the main idea of the episode, and everything we do in the episode is going to enforce this one way or another. Like the opening section of this episode is Luke showing a picture of the basement ghost that he saw in last week's episode to Abigail, and talking about how nobody ever believes him. And then we cut from there to Luke in rehab, and then talking once again about how his family doesn't ever believe him. And it's this through line of, we're establishing very clearly that belief is the central idea of this episode. And yet, even if the main idea, the theme, is obvious, I think what we're doing with the theme is really, really complicated, actually.
Yeah. I like that, because it's not necessarily obvious to connect the ideas of, yes, I believe you when you say that you saw something, and I believe in you. I have faith in you, but I think these are related. These are basically they're basically both ways of saying, I trust you to follow through. I trust you to be a good person. We introduced this idea of being a good person, where Steve says, I love you. I think you're a good person, but and the implication being like you can be a quote unquote good person and yet still let people down routinely and not really be reliable, not really be
Yeah.
trustworthy, not be somebody that I can believe in or
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah, and I think Luke's like pathology is kind of this idea that like everyone is kind of warning him about Joey throughout the course of the episode. Like Steve is in his assholey way. His caseworker at the rehab is also like the first thing that happens after Joey goes missing is they're in like a group session, but his caseworker is like talking directly to him and being like, "Look, Luke, here's the thing about recovery is we can't hinge everything on other people. Like junkies do this, like people fuck up, they drag people down with them, like you can't, like she's like talking directly to him and it has the exact opposite effect of what she wants on him.
Yeah.
So everyone's warning her about her, and I think part of this for Luke is he needs to believe in her and believe her and fix her, because he feels like even if he says things like, no one in my family believes that me, and I don't blame them for that because I fucked them over so many times. Like he says that, but there's still a part of him that like feels betrayed and disappointed that they never believe him in things. And I think part of that is because like the original impetus of that, the birth of that was him telling the truth about these ghosts he's seeing. We get what, like the opening scene of this movie is Abigail is sitting across from him. He, by the way, hands the picture to Abigail, who is holding the picture. So this ghost, whatever it is corporeal in some sense.
Right.
We also know he's telling the truth about the ghost in the basement. We saw it too. He's also seeing this bowler hat ghost, which we don't actually ever get to see him communicate to anyone. Is like, hey, remember that hat you gave me yesterday, Dad? Well, its owner came to visit me last night and took it back. But we can assume that he told them about that. And the same thing happened, that they just didn't believe him or said, oh, you're just being just your imagination at work again.
Yeah.
So like he needs to believe that these people have wronged him because he was telling the truth and they didn't believe him. So then he has to believe Joey. He has to believe in Joey. And even if all the signs are pointing towards, man, she's fucking up. And that doesn't take away from the fact that he loves her, right? Like, I think that's a good point too, is like the rest of the family loves Luke. They just, you reach a point where you just can't deal with it anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's his journey throughout this, is like, he can't allow himself to see that, because that would mean that maybe his family was right about him, and he would really have to internalize that.
I love all that. I was thinking a lot of those things. So there's a few things you said in there I think are really interesting. First of all, I like that, he's so insistent that him and Joey are not in a relationship. We're not in a relationship.
Yeah.
And I think he's being totally honest there. I think to him, Joey is his little sister, who he's estranged from and feels like he let down. But we see so many direct references to Eleanor in the episode, where he's clearly thinking about her. Even as he's taking care of Joey, he's thinking about Nellie. He's talking about Nellie. He's telling her about Nellie, his sister, who he has this real connection with. And yet he betrayed. He still he let her down. Another thing in there is the idea. So the bowler hat. I love the bowler hat as a symbol. I just, because his dad is like, now you're too big. You're too big to be telling these tales. I forget exactly the way he says it. He's basically like, you're too big to be scared of these things and telling these stories and acting like a little kid. You're too big. And then he puts the hat on the kid's head, and the hat is obviously enormous.
Yeah.
And it goes down over like the top half of his head. And it's like, he's not too big. He's a little kid. You're putting too much on him. It just emphasizes how he is small and scared.
Yeah.
And all he can do is really beyond. He's actually too small to even lie, and exhibit real deceit. It's like you really should just believe a kid this small. And that ties to this idea that it's not just that they wronged him by not listening to him. It's that if they had left the house when he said to, the mom wouldn't have died. Their whole lives would have been different, right?
Yeah.
So not trusting him led to all of that. And so in his mind, like, not trusting someone is kind of a horrible thing to do. And so he's putting all of this trust in Joey, even though he really shouldn't, because to him, it's like he has to, which is really what you just said, kind of just framed a different way.
No, I like that. I love the callback to the Hugh scene, because that scene really stuck out to me as well. Like it's such an interesting thing, because Hugh and Luke are having this conversation. They're having this discussion about the basement ghost, and his dad is being dismissive, and like I don't want to seem like we're being too judgmental on the parents as well, because like there's a part of me that thinks if my 4-year-old came to me and said he saw a ghost in my basement, I went down into the basement, searched every nook and cranny of it, found nothing, I would too go like, I think you just probably saw something and confused it for something else. But it's really like the lines here are really great, because Hugh says, "Go ahead, I'm listening." And then Luke says, "This house is bad, Dad. It's bad." And Hugh never answers that question. Like, he says he's listening, right? He specifically uses the words, "I'm listening," which, as we will recall from previous week conversations, that's one of Nellie's like big qualms with her family, is that nobody listens to her. And so we get that comparison with Luke here as well. And then he says this thing, and that's when Olivia comes down the stairs with the box of stuff, and then we move from there right into the bowler hat conversation. And so we don't like they don't even answer his, like, he comes full out and says it, like, this is a bad place, Dad. This is a bad place. And he's right. That's the thing that's so fascinating about it, is like the kid is just right. He's just telling the truth. And again, I completely understand why his parents would be dismissive of that kind of stuff, but he's just telling the truth here. Yeah. And no one is listening to him. And we know that because they don't even answer that. And we move on to the bowler hat, and then everything you said about the way it fits. And I was a little uncomfortable in the scene where Hugh, it did seem like he was putting a lot of pressure on the kid. It's like, "Oh, you want this hat? Let me use this as a teaching moment," or not even a teaching moment, but a moment of like threatening to withhold this thing you want unless you promise that the stuff you saw was not real.
Yeah.
And he doesn't specifically make him promise, but like the implication is like, this hat is for big kids and you're big enough for this hat now. Big kids don't see things like this, and they don't like, and it's just like, it's a lot of pressure to put on a 6-year-old. I think he's 6.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, give me the answer I want so I can stop thinking about this and stop having this conversation. And here's a toy.
Mm-hmm. Especially since, again, like, everything swirling around this house is agreeing with everything they're saying. Like, I love, we leave that scene, and then we have a conversation with Olivia and Hugh. She puts on that shawl and then has deja vu, which is a very, very specific memory of a thing that has no connotation to their lives whatsoever. It's like, that's not how deja vu works.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know what your read of that sequence was, but like the show sticks it out so much as like, hey, that got really specific.
Yeah. To
the point where you're wearing some shawl you found in the attic of this house, and then suddenly having this very specific vision of the past. Yeah. I guess
that's what I read it as. I read it as just like, I don't know, maybe something in the space of like a brief possession, or just seeing a flicker of the past. Since we kind of, it's been suggested that she has a bit of the touch, just like her, at least one of her daughters.
Yep.
So perhaps this just caused her to see this flicker of the past. And again, I think I unfortunately forgot all of the details of the things that she saw, but I got the sense that it was drawing us a picture of the family that lived here at some point in the past, and that could be relevant at some point.
Yeah, I mean, we got it was 3 kids books on the lower shelves so they can reach them. Specifics to one of the children in a wheelchair. It was a lot of specifics to like things that I think were meant to clock.
Yeah,
that could come up later.
Right. So and that's kind of why I said it that way. Is like I noticed all of those things, but I was trying to connect them to like, okay, is one of these supposed to be Abigail? Is one of these supposed to be
Yeah.
Hat and Cane Man, and it was like nothing jumped out to me as being like an obvious thing we were supposed to put together.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is really interesting that at this point in the story, we're 4 episodes in, we really don't know anything about the history of the house, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know, I think Mrs. Dudley mentions that the previous owners were called the Hills,
Mm-hmm.
which I think we said on the podcast before that it's a little funny that it's called Hill House, not because it is nestled in the hills, which I think it also is, but
Mm-hmm.
because the people that lived there before were the Hills.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. I
Yeah.
like that. But like a lot of the book was getting to understand the history of this place and the bad things that have happened here. Like that was kind of the opening salvo of the book. Like all our characters get to the house and then we have a history lesson about the house. That hasn't happened yet. We have ghosts that we're seeing. We have Abigail. We have this bent neck lady. We have the tall man. And then of course we have all the creepy in the background ghosts, of which there are many in this episode. I'm sure you saw them all, Matt.
Oh yeah, as usual, I saw all the ghosts.
I do send, so just so everyone knows, I do send Matt a few. I mean, I think that this is a tangent, but like the thing about the background ghosts that is great is the camera and Flanagan's direction is drawing your attention towards a certain place in the frame. Like, that's how film works. And then he puts the ghosts in a place in the frame that your eyes shouldn't be looking anyway. So the honest truth is, to see them, you probably have to be like looking in a place that you're not supposed to.
Yeah. You have to, which I'm going to watch the show the way I'm supposed to watch it, especially on a first watch where I'm into the characters and everything.
But I mean, there is occasional points where you maybe just like your eyes scan over something and you see one in the background and you get goosebumps, because speaking of the scene with the Shaw and her talking about her very specific memory, the entire time she's telling that story to him, in the background, out of focus, is I think a girl ghost just standing there, and she's kind of like, it's not like she's hunched, but like her arms are in a specific posture and her shoulders are kind of up, and she's just still, like entirely still in the background. And so once I noticed her, then I'm just like watching the episode and like I'm looking at Liv and Hugh, and I'm looking at Liv and Hugh, and then like my eyes kind of go over here. Yep, still there, still not moving at all, that ghost. And it is effectively creepy if you happen to notice them. But yeah, I want to be clear here. I don't think you're like watching the show wrong if you haven't noticed any of these background ghosts. I think they're just a fun element that if you happen to notice, can enhance the creepiness of a scene.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like maybe sometimes they're out of focus in a way where even if I saw them, I'd just be like, that's probably just like the banister at an angle or something,
Sure.
Which I think is even intentional. Like and by that I mean it's intentional that it not be unambiguous. Yeah. Because one of my favorite themes of the book that we read is the ambiguity of it all. Of just every single time anything ghostly happens, you're left like, did that happen, or like what exactly was that? And I think having the nature of the ghosts that you're seeing in the frame being a little ambiguous, or maybe like that could just be like a distorted reflection of the wood. I mean,
yeah,
it's one of those things. Just like I remember being a kid, and I forget the word for it, and now I've lost all confidence in my ability to pronounce things. But like when I was a kid, I would look at like the door to my bedroom, and see just scary faces, and I would just be really scared of the faces and stuff that I saw in the door. In the whirls and of the wood is what I mean. The because it was a unfinished wood.
Yeah.
And I guess it's just like there's a lot of creepiness and unsettlingness to something where you can pattern match it to look like something, but you're not really sure, and so it just stays on the edge between sort of coalescing into being that thing versus just being visual noise. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think that ties kind of perfectly with both Mr. Smiley from last week and then also the opening monologue of this episode, which is one of the addicts that's in rehab with Luke talking about the idea that people see faces everywhere. And then he transitions that into the story of this poor young girl, he's this burned dead young girl he saw, and he saw her face everywhere. Great sequence, by the way. Just like, I really do love, I think it is just true that through every episode of the show we've had like an extended quote unquote ghost story. Like in Steve's was the most transparent. I think it was the woman from the opening where she's talking about seeing her dead husband above her in bed. But I think in Theo's episode, like, I think you could, the little poor little abused girl talking about Mr. Smiley could be her ghost story. In the Shirley episode, Max is the multiple tellings of seeing his grandma by his bedside is like the way these people are telling ghost stories, and Flanagan shoots them all similarly in that we never, as we said in the first episode, we never cut away to actually get to see any of the stuff, but we're absorbed in it and there and kind of visualizing it in our mind. But yeah, I mean, I think that the idea of seeing faces, and that our brain, I think we just naturally kind of see faces and things, right? Like, I think that's just what human beings do. It's just like a predator response, right? Almost.
Yeah, no, I think it's you're either hunting or you're looking for predators. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I it's funny. I only just now, I think, sitting here, remembered how scared I was of that door, even though we've been talking about this idea. And Mr. Smiley, like you just said, was an explicit, wood. I don't know what the right word for it is. Like, just the texture of the wood, and the fact that you can see knots and whorls and stuff. It's not like I, repressed it or whatever. It's just, it took a lot of joggling of that memory handle to get that to kind of pop up to the surface. I like that. I like it for its own sake and how it operates in the show, but I also just like how it sort of is a visual way of expressing some of the themes of the novel, which again, I continually appreciate how we took this novel and with all these interesting themes, and then Flanagan has reinvented those themes in the visual format in ways that are recognizable but distinct from how they appeared in the novel.
I agree so much, and that was one of the things I was a little like worried about in the structure of our show. Is like, okay, we're going to spend a month reading this book, and then we're going to get into the show, and really the comparisons are surface level and it's names of characters, but for the most part, the show just did its own thing. And while obviously Flanagan is playing loose with the idea of adaptation here, I do think it's quite remarkable the ways in which he's channeling the book in what is essentially a completely different story. I totally agree with you. Like, I'm so glad we did it this way. The reading it beforehand has just opened this thing up to me in completely new ways that I'm loving.
Yeah. So we've mentioned Abigail a few times in this conversation.
Yeah. What's up? So, question before you get into what I knew she wanted to say. Did you go into this episode kind of expecting Abigail to play a larger role in the Focused on Luke episode?
Absolutely. I mean, that's actually what I was going to say right now is simply that we're waiting for the Luke episode. We know that Luke has seen probably the most straightforwardly ghosty ghost in the whole thing. And she talks to her. Does she talk back to him? If so, what does she tell him?
Yeah.
And like, how often does he see her? Does kid Luke know that she's a ghost? Doesn't seem like he does. Seems like he thinks she's just another kid who's like on the property, and he tells people about the little girl, and they're like, "There's no little girl. You're making her up. She's an imaginary friend."
Mm-hmm.
But I did expect, and it's not like I'm disappointed or whatever. It's just interesting that we get to the Luke chapter and it's very little to do with Abigail, really just no more than there has been in the previous episodes. Yeah. And instead we focus more on this bowler hat man.
Yeah, I agree. It was a little surprising. I remember being surprised the first time I watched the show, and you kind of leave this episode still unsure what to make of that. I think it's one thing we can say for sure is that every ghost we've seen in the show so far, Sans Abigail has a very specific mood and feel to it, right? We have our background ghosts, but we also have the bent neck lady. We have now this bowler hat tall man ghost. We have the basement ghost. there is a sense of fear and danger. Oh, I guess the sick old woman that's in the reflection of the microphone thing.
Yeah.
There's a sense of fear and danger associated with these ghosts. And there's none of that with Abigail, right? Like
Yeah.
is she the elusive Casper the Friendly Ghost that we've talked about before? But it just seems like, yeah, Luke is not afraid of her. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no sense of danger around her. She's just sitting there silently so far, kind of just hanging out with him.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't know what to do. I mean, there are certain tropes that your brain kind of fits it to, where it's like, well, okay, if this was a house where a lot of bad stuff happened, then maybe these evil bad ghosts, like the hat ghost or the basement ghost, are like horrible, bad, evil men who were just awful people, and in the afterlife they take the form of being awful people, awful, scary shadows of their living selves. And maybe Abigail was a little girl who died tragically, and so her ghost is just of a different nature. I mean, again, tropes, right? But we have pretty little to go on when it comes to like who these people were and what happened here.
Yeah. I mean, just the continued questions of the show, and I think clearly things we're going to have to move into in the latter half now, right? Because as you said, like this is technically the penultimate of the character focused episodes. We still have Nell left, but these are the ones that are still alive right now. So it does feel like we're moving into a new phase of the show after this, and maybe we'll get some clarification on some of that there.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, I think maybe the implication of not having much information about Abigail is like, well, Abigail's probably just really important to this, and so you don't want to play your hand too early.
Yeah, we're saving it. Yeah, that could be. I mean, there's lots of stuff if we feel like we're saving, right? The history, like, and maybe this is stuff we just won't get. Like, we won't get an understanding of like maybe the scene with the story of the kid in the wheelchair is just to be a little off-putting and creepy about how specific she got. Maybe it's not going to pay off in any kind of historical context way, or maybe it will. But it's still up in the air.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I'm trying to decide if I want to make a prediction here.
Go for it.
Because I feel so. Haunting of Hill House did tell us a lot of information about what happened, and by that I mean the book did tell us a lot of information about what happened, but it also was really cagey with a lot of details. So like it would tell, it told us like, it was built by this guy named Luke Crain, and he had a wife and daughters, and then the daughters grew up, and one of the daughters had a companion, and then people died, and it all feels super arm's length and like passed down through rumor. So it's like, maybe if I'm going to make a prediction, it's like whatever we find out about what happened in this house in the past, it's not going to be very clear or satisfying. Like it's not going to be, that explains it all. It's going to be more, more just like, okay, so basically a bunch of weird, violent, secretive stuff happened, and some people died. And we can kind of read between the lines about what might have actually happened, but the show's not going to tell us. That's my prediction.
Okay. I like it.
Cool.
We will see.
All right.
Can we talk about Bowler Hat Guy?
Yes, please.
So this thing happened to me last week, where I was boldly and absurdly chatting with you about the fact that I remembered this show scaring me more the first time I watched it, and how I thought it was odd that, I mean, I think there were definitely moments in the first episode that scared me a little bit, but the last two episodes, episode 2 and 3, didn't have a lot of, oh, holy shit moments where I was like fucking terrified. And I was like, yeah, maybe this show's just like not as scary as I remembered it being. And then like literally seconds later, like I was messaging you this while I was watching the episode. Literally seconds later, we get to Luke waking up in the middle of the night to the tapping outside his door. And this entire sequence, I've watched this episode 3 times in preparation for today. I was uncomfortable and had to like pause it every single time. I think this like gets me right at where I am the most scared of things. Every part of it, just like waking up in the middle of the night, hearing a noise outside your door, and the act of opening your door because you want to see what it is, but also you don't want to see. And then there's a fucking guy right there. The fact that he's floating for some reason, like just not like just inches off the ground floating, and just kind of tapping around the rooms. Luke under the bed when he slowly comes into the room, and that like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, and then the moment where he's on his way out, Luke finally can't hold his breath anymore, lets his breath out, and the ghost turns. That, all of that is just like, if you want to scare me specifically, this is exactly how you do it.
Yeah. I love all that so much. The inventiveness of the cane. I mean, my experience of it, it was the first time I watched it. So you're hearing this tapping, and part of you is curious. It's what Luke doesn't know, which is that it's a ghost, and he should probably just stay in his bed. But you also, as the viewer, you want to know what's tapping. Is there something tapping on the door? Yeah. I had no idea. Like I think the closest I had as a guess was just like there's a ghost knocking slowly on the door, and then you see that it's this cane, and then you're like, what? Wait a second, and then you realize he's floating along and like still using the cane.
Yeah,
like while float. It's just such a creative, cool design, and then just seeing the feet, like you said.
Yeah.
It's so uncanny. The floating. I wonder how they did the effect with the floating, because it's so smooth and perfect.
Yeah.
And like nothing about him seems ethereal or like an effect at all.
Yeah.
But it's just a dude who's a few inches off the ground, just translating around without bobbing. There's no bob to it. It's just perfectly straightforward movement and rotation. And
I love that we don't even get to see what happens in the scene, right? Because like he hears Luke's breathing, he comes back around, he reaches under the bed and lifts the bed, and that's the only time we get to see the man's face, by the way, is that moment. Because in all the present day stuff, he's faced away from him. And then we cut the scene, like Luke screams and we cut the scene, and we're like, wait, what happened then? I mean, he's screaming, so presumably that's when parents rush in the door and the ghost isn't there, and then they just dismiss him as having a silly bad dream or whatever. But yeah, I mean, like we've seen that these ghosts are physical enough to tear pieces of pajamas,
right?
To get handed a piece of paper and hold it that we see with Abigail. So like they have a corporeal presence to them that could be a physical danger to these kids.
Yeah,
and we just don't know what happens there.
Right. I mean, I think there's a case to be made that like starting the show with the fact that Eleanor has been killed gives us a sense of like these ghosts want to kill these children. This is they're not just spooky, this isn't I was going to provide a reference, but I don't want to spoil that thing, but just like this isn't a thing where the ghosts are actually like somehow well-meaning, or the nature of the ghosts is that they just want to scare you or to be remembered or what. It's like, no, they're malicious, malevolent ghosts. They're bad. They're trying to drive people crazy. And is this because the house is bad, or is it because the ghosts are bad? Again, more ambiguity. That it's fine to not know that, but basically, we're afraid for the children. And I think it's correct to be afraid for the children.
Yeah, and I just want to state, we said this before the recording. I'm going to state it again here. If that man came into my room when I was 6 years old, I too would be addicted to heroin, because I would do anything in my power to keep that experience away from me. And that is ultimately what Luke says, right? Is like, I love that Luke monologue at the end where he's the one we see beginning at the beginning of the episode, but we don't see the full nature of what he says there until the end. And it's this idea of things from that house followed me my entire life. including the man with the bowler hat that is following him, and he started taking drugs to push those things away, and that's why he could never stay on the wagon long enough, because they would always return and follow him, and he used to push them away. It's like, yeah, I get that, because I mean, like, one thing we haven't talked about yet is fear, and I think that's like, belief is one of the big themes of this episode. I think fear is the other one, because he describes himself as he was always a scared little kid. He was always afraid, and that goes perfectly into the idea of the fearless moral inventory thing that step 4 of the recovery process is asking him to do. I love what he says in the end of this episode, that like, I figured when I would get older, I would get more brave, and it turns out, no, it's just the things I was afraid of changed. And I love that, right? It's like, like, he's just a fearful person, and like, that doesn't go away on its own. It's just, yeah, you're not going to be afraid of the things you're afraid of as a kid. It becomes more complicated. Those fears become more complicated, but just as real to you.
And I think also he's got a lot to be afraid of. Like,
yeah,
he grew up in this, with ghosts, and then his mother killed herself, which I think undermined his sense of any kind of like reliability of in the outside world. Because if that can happen, then kind of anything can happen. At the same time, and this is a point I wanted to hit anyway, so I'll try to kind of sandwich this in here. We have this theme of faith and belief, because even after his mother died, he still believed in her in the sense that he didn't really think she was dead, didn't really understand what death meant. Possibly this is because he knew the ghosts were real, who knows? But he says this really poignant thing about every time that the headlights would come down the street, he was thinking it could be mom coming home finally, and basically having faith in her despite the fact that she's gone.
Yeah.
And then that image merging with the ghost of the ghost of his mom, when the headlights, when Steve's headlights pull up, was amazing.
So good. I mean, yeah, like, I think this matters a lot, right? So the end of the episode is him, and I want to talk about the counting to 7 thing. We'll get there in a sec, but is him kind of frantically counting to 7 as the bowler hat ghost is slowly catching up to him. Finally, in the last moments, he stops, and it moves right behind him. He turns around to face it, and we are met with not the creepy tall man ghost, but his mother, Olivia, in the bowler hat. Her eyes open, and she says, "Come home." And yeah, it's the headlights established from the monologue that turns out to be Steve's headlights. But I do think this is like I want to mention this just because this is like, the ghost of Olivia is beckoning her children home, right? I think we can just definitively say that now, right? Like, she did that with Nell. We saw it with Shirley with the light flickering on in the model forever home. It's very explicit here. And I mean, I don't think we've seen it as, I think Theo's maybe kind of the exception here a little bit. That we haven't had a specific moment where Olivia has come to Theo and said, "Hey, come home, kid." But it's enough of a trend that I think we can say it definitively.
Yeah. I mean, I think Steve hasn't had that moment, but Steve seems like more resistant to the supernatural stuff than the others for whatever. I had this thought, by the way, that like the supernatural exposure scales roughly with their age, where the oldest kid saw nothing supernatural in Hill House and continues to have no real supernatural affinity and has only seen Nell. And then the second oldest kid has like vague, maybe she sees things sometimes, unclear. The third oldest kid is, has the dead zone powers, but didn't really see ghosts in the house as far as we know, except for maybe that apparition with her mom. But she would get like premonitions from the house all the time. And then the two youngest kids, who are, tied because they're twins, they saw all the ghosts in the house.
Yeah.
And then it's sort of less clear, like, do they have psychic inclinations on top of that? We don't know in Nell's case. I wouldn't be surprised to find out something about her in Luke's case, my feeling is we're kind of going a different direction with him, where he's been more sort of explicitly haunted for his whole life. He's been seeing ghosts for his whole life, and that's why he's been taking heroin is to treat that. So I don't know if perhaps I'm like being overly like linear about this, but I from kind of early in the show, actually, I had this idea that it's just like the younger kids are more sensitive, the older kids are less sensitive.
No, I think that tracks for sure. And that's perhaps why they're going, the house is going for the younger ones first, most dramatically and specifically. I like what you said about like his heroin use as being something to just keep away from the ghost, which is textual to the story. But one thing I think is so interesting about this is going back to the monologue from the very beginning of the episode, where the guy telling the story about how he gouged his eyes out to stop seeing the face of this poor burned up little girl. And he says, I think, I can't remember the quote exactly, but he says something like, I used to prevent myself from seeing that face, and by using, I made sure I would never not see it. Right. Yeah. And so I do think there's a connection here with Luke, where he started using drugs in order to run from these things that happened to him as a child, and the ghosts that embody and represent these things that happened to him as a child. And yet by using, he was basically guaranteeing that these things would always be right over his shoulder. And that's, I love the idea of this thing slowly creeping up on him throughout the course of the episode. Is just like, this is just a thing that, like, you like, and it shows up, I think, at Luke's lowest points constantly, right? Like, we don't see it when he's safe in rehab. We see it when he abandons the support of rehab, goes back out in order to save Joey, and that's when it shows up again. And it's like, it's chasing you down. Like, it is the temptation to use that's chasing him down, but I think it is just like, it's all of it kind of wrapped into one thing.
Yeah, I think so. You're right.
I love it. I think it's such a wonderful effect throughout the episode of just constantly having him look up, and there he is, and each time he's just a little bit closer, it's a little bit closer each time, never facing him. It's a really, really effective image. It's really good.
Yeah, right. I do. I guess one thing I wonder is, like, is this ghost that is haunting him, is it torturing him on purpose, or is this just kind of its nature?
Yeah.
Like, does it like to watch him suffer? Is it trying to drive him to do drugs, or is it just, am I being overly literal about it? And it would be fine not to have. Are we meant
to read something into the fact that it turns into Olivia?
Right.
At the end, right? Like, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, other than the fact that, like, it's representative of the house, right? It's a finger of the house. It's like, part of me just keeps thinking, and again, this is largely because we read the book and because a lot of the book ideas are in my head. It's like, these individual ghosts are not even really individual ghosts. It's the house. The house is what's evil. The house is just an evil, insane house, and the ghosts are just its limbs that it uses to torture people. And why does it do that? Because it's an insane, evil house. It doesn't want anything in particular. That's just what it does.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've mentioned Joey. We've talked about Joey a few times. We talked about certain aspects of Joey's character, but there's a lot more to say about Joey, I think.
Yes.
This is a character that, again, we haven't met before this episode. She's very important in this episode. Luke has a sort of, I think, like we said a bit ago, kind of delusional level of faith in her, kind of needs her to be, to pull through, to get better.
Yeah.
He's resting all of his hopes on this. He's doing exactly what they accuse him of doing, which is, like, he's tied his recovery to her recovery. And
yeah,
I think, there's a lot going on with Joey under the surface that Luke, I think, is very oblivious to. It's funny. I want to even say I was oblivious to, like on the first watch through. I was just kind of, I guess I'm just very susceptible to this, but I was just with Luke, and I also wanted to see the best in her.
Yeah.
But there's so many bits though where you see stuff, or there's just stuff that just strikes you a little bit wrong, particularly during the dinner with Steve. But also outside of that, there's just so many moments that strike you as being off.
Yeah. So we have to talk about the dinner scene, and we need to spend like half an hour on that scene because there's so much there. But I one of the things that, as you were talking, that I thought of, that I completely agree with you on this, is a scene very early in the show. It is when we first established the idea of the fearless moral inventory that Luke is in the middle of trying to compile, and he's like kind of in his room. It's about to be lights out. She's in there with him, and he's working through this whole thing, and he gives his moral inventory, which, by the way, small tangent, but like he lists the things that he's done to his family, and he's like burned Shirley for thousands of dollars. We've seen that. Stolen from Steve on countless occasions. We've seen that. Broken Nellie's heart, missed her wedding. We've seen that. He says lied to Theo like it was my job. And I think that's interesting. That's like the only one we haven't actually like seen what he's referring to here. Like what that relationship was. And I think that is really interesting because in the Theo episode, we got this firm kind of connection between the two of them, that like she was closer to him than maybe any of the other kids outside of Nellie were.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's just interesting that they haven't established that yet. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, funny to think that he thinks that he's getting away with lying to Theo.
Just true.
Like, I don't know if this is another prediction or not, but like, I wouldn't be surprised to learn that whatever he thinks, he was lying to her. I wouldn't be surprised if she knew it the whole time and was just like tolerating it.
Probably. Yeah. I do want to say, as just like a circle back to our Shirley episode from a couple weeks ago, like we got some comments from people that said we were perhaps a little too harsh on Shirley for disallowing Luke to come to the wedding because he was high. And I just wanted to clarify from my perspective, it's like, I think Luke coming to his sister's wedding high was a fuck up, like a huge fuck up. Like, I'm not saying, and probably he shouldn't have been allowed to come into the wedding. I guess my complaints from the Shirley's perspective was, she kind of does this unilaterally, and then as far as we understand, never filled in the rest of her family about what happened here. Like, maybe telling Nell on her wedding day, hey, Luke showed up, but I sent him away because he was high, is not like the good call to do, like on her wedding day. But maybe like a few months later, just like, hey, by the way, like Luke's fucked up again, and that's why he couldn't come to your wedding. Like, I didn't allow him. I would not allow him to do that. It doesn't seem like Shirley did that, and that's my main complaint. And then also, I think here's $100, get 30 for the cab, and shoot up the rest. I don't give a shit. Like, I think like, while I think the intentions were good, and I agree, like, the blame for this should be on Luke. He got high the day of his sister's wedding. I think that from the Shirley perspective, it is exactly what we talked about, where she's so fixed on the perfect everything, the image of perfection, and she wants to fix it in this way that she just kind of completely takes over. And so just wanted to loop around that. I don't know if you had any additional clarification or things you wanted to say there.
I think it's just a really good character defining moment where there were a lot of ways to handle that, and the way that she handled it was very much centering appearances, like you just said, not doing it particularly gracefully or empathetically. And it's like, and this, it's like, oh, you think you do it better, Matt? It's like, no, it's a fictional character. The point of putting her in the situation is to say something about her and the way she reacts to things. This isn't this isn't like a moral judgment. This is just like, this is why you put the character in that situation, is to say that about her.
I agree. And that's kind of why we were pulling out that, because I like everything, the author is a genius and everything's intentional. Everything matters. Every choice to show something in a scene is to further our understanding of who the character is and how they behave.
Yeah.
In this case, I agree. Like, this was part of Theo's Shirley's thing.
Right. Yes.
All right, so to go back to the original thing we were talking about, which is Joey and the ways in which Joey is not doing well. Like we see in the scene when Luke is going through his moral inventory, Joey is like, we've just met her, right? So we don't have a depiction of like what good head on her shoulders Joey is. I guess we see that a little bit later in the dinner scene, arguably. I know we'll get to that, but like she's clearly like not doing well. Like he's like he goes through this whole thing and he gives his fearless moral inventory, and she says something like, yeah, well, at least you didn't rob morphine from your dying mother. And his response to that is, I would if she had let me, but she died. Like he couldn't. And like she just said something like really emotional there. And then I think the other thing was like she says something to the effect of like, I don't there's not enough pages in that book to fill in everything that I've done. And his response to that is just like, how far do I go back? Do I go back to high school? Like he's not listening to her, right? Yeah. He's just like, he's focused on himself in this moment and he's not listening to her. She's clearly like in a bad place. And like, he clocks it at the very end of the scene where he's just like, hey, you've been 9 months clean. Like your sobriety is a baby now. You got this. And it's like, he's just not fully in tuned with, she's in a crisis mode right now, right this very minute. She's teetering and he just doesn't fully clock it, I think.
He may be even saying things that are actively driving her in the opposite direction by essentially, pushing buttons or minimizing or just like clearly communicating that he doesn't actually understand what she's talking about. I mean, because we have no idea, right? She could have done horrendous things and feel really just untouchable levels of guilt about this. And he's kind of sitting there being like, it can't be any worse than what I've done. And it's like, look, it can be worse than what you've done. What we see her do in this episode is in some ways bad enough, but that might just be kind of par for the course for her when she needs a fix.
Yeah, I mean, like we said already, like he needs her to be okay, and it's less about this. This might be a little unfair, so I'm just going to preface this with this might be a little unfair as I'm saying it, but like in my mind, sometimes it's more about him needing her to be okay is less for her benefit in his mind, and more because he's staked so much in, this is a person who believes in me. This is one of the two people in my life that have believed in me and never stopped believing in me. And if one of those people fails themselves or is a flawed human being that makes mistakes and falls off the wagon and struggles, and like, if that's the person that believes in me, then maybe I'm not worth believing in at all, actually. And so, yeah, he hangs his sobriety on her sobriety, I think is that exact idea that like, she's the one that got me clean and pushed me through it. And if she fails, then what hope do I possibly have?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're exactly right. He gets the money from Steve, which interestingly mirrors the moment when Shirley gave him the money earlier. Yeah. And it's very much a like, I'm imagining that It's Always Sunny meme where Danny DeVito is like trying to shove someone off of a ledge as they're trying to climb up it, because it's like Luke is actually in that moment trying to get out of the pit, trying to help someone else out of the pit and stay out of the pit himself. And Steve is totally disregarding both of. I mean, he doesn't even know that Joey's involved in this. Similar with Steve's wife, where they're or ex-wife. I guess they're separated.
Yeah,
like in both cases, it's like you've got. The reason I mentioned that, maybe that came off as a non sequitur. What I was trying to say is like all of Luke's kind of support mechanisms are just complete garbage right now, because Nellie has just died. Joey is breaking down and falling off the wagon. And then when he tries to revisit his siblings, you're just reminded of the way they behave his siblings and his, sibling-in-law, which is like stiff arm, and in fact giving him money, and the money then directly feeds into Joey taking the money and abandoning him, which I thought was a great, like, poetic, dark poetic moment of just like, this is even Steve's attempt to help you has actually just shoved you down even further.
And at the same time, I think the complexity of this I love is because, like, it would be very simple to just say, like, Luke's family is failing to be the support mechanism he needs in one of his most desperate moments, and we have the ability to look at this from the perspective of, we know he's clean and he's just trying to help someone else who's suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're like, yeah, help him. Come on, help him. But we haven't been party to the 10 years of Luke fucking them over, taking their money. And we've seen pieces of it, right? But, like, all these people are at their wits' end with Luke at this point. They're done. They just can't do it anymore. And so, like, it comes off as, like, very kind of dismissive and mean, and like he needs your support right now. He needs it. And I think on some level he does. Like, I think that's just a correct statement, but it's like, also, it's hard to blame those people too much because they've been burned too much. Like, I think that's the thing, is like, we see Joey do this to him, and Luke is the protagonist of this episode, so we're, like, totally in tune with Luke. And if Joey came back 20 minutes later and then was like, come on, man, I really need your help, there would be a part of us that would be like, no, man, don't help her. Right. She fucked you over. She actually, like, manipulated you and, like, tried to kiss you to pickpocket you.
Right.
Like, don't help her. And that's the same way the rest of the Crains are feeling about Luke. And this is complicated, man. This is not easy. Like, being a support mechanism for an addict is not an easy thing at all.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, that's it's funny because you watch a whole episode from the perspective of the addict, and you're just like, everybody's so mean to Luke. But, like, if you've ever had, I mean, I'm sure, by the time you're our age, you've had people in your life who have just, like, lied to you maliciously.
Yeah.
And really, like, for me, at this point in my life, that's like a one strike and you're out. It's like, oh, you've revealed to me the kind of person that you are, and we're done now. And contrast this with the person who just has a pattern of lying. It's like, yeah, you can't. You're actually a fool if you just keep extending trust to someone who keeps lying. And you actually can't help someone who won't help themselves. And sounds all super judgmental and everything, I know, but, like, it's good to sort of contextualize Luke's story from within, the frame of, like, okay, the effects he's having on everyone else, which are not present in this episode because it's the Luke episode. That's what I love about the show, is when you're in that character's episode, you just so thoroughly see things from their perspective that you're just like, how could they treat me like this? And it's like, come on, man. But, like, you don't have that thought in that moment because you're so invested with him.
I mean, that is like the dinner is, like, the perfect exploration of this, because Steve is such a fucking asshole throughout this entire dinner. Like, he is, everything that is said to him about Luke, he's dismissive of it. Like, even when it's as simple as, like, Joey saying, Luke tells me you're a writer, he says, like, oh, really? I'm surprised he's mentioned it. And it's just like, you, Steve, you insecure little shit. Like, he is so insecure about his writing, Matt. Like, when she asks him what he writes about, like, he is immediately uncomfortable and embarrassed, like, immediately. I like, we haven't talked about actors much in this episode, but Mikael Hausman, who plays Steve, like, nails the scene. Like, he just, the insecurity and the defensiveness, even, like, oh, Luke's a writer too, and Steve's, like, immediately like, what? No, he's not. Oh, it's just about Abigail. I wrote about her too, but I bet his blowback will be significantly less. It's like, fuck off, man. Fuck off. But Steve is 100% right about Joey in this.
Yeah.
Like, it comes off as dismissive and rude, and that's because it is. It's mean. I'm not saying he does it in the right way, but he's like 100% right about her, and that's not an accident, right? This is the structure of the show has created this scene to maximize you coming out of the scene going, Steve's a jerk, but he's fucking right, and I love that. I love that so much.
Yeah. I think in that moment we are very much like Steve's a jerk because we've seen nothing particularly suspicious about Joey. I'll speak for myself. Just first watch through of the episode, up through that point, I was pretty much just like on team Joey, thinking Steve is being an asshole. I will say there was kind of a false note during that part when she, basically when Joey's sort of like monopolizing the dinner and giving these long, she's almost giving a monologue and everyone's kind of humoring her. This is so interesting because like you never know what you're bringing into a show versus what the show is actually just doing. Sure. But I kind of pattern matched the way that Joey was behaving with like the sort of overly dramatic facial expressions and hand gestures and like kind of aggressive eye contact. To me, struck me as like a performance, a kind of manipulative performance to kind of sell everyone on like how good she is and how hard she's trying and how hard her life is. And the interesting thing about this is when you're someone who nobody ever believes, that just makes it worse because now you feel like you have to sell it even harder when you're being genuine, right? I feel like it's a trap that people get into where if they're a liar and they know that people think they're a liar, then they just gotta lay it on even thicker and be, you know what I mean? I've definitely just like seen this in real life with people. so that's what I mean when I say I'm bringing stuff into it. It's like that to me, I couldn't decide if the show was saying, okay, Joey is trying to manipulate them, or if the show was saying Joey is exactly the person she's like portraying here, but nobody's going to give her a chance because you expect her to be manipulative. So you're going to read her earnestness as performative, whether it's performative or not.
Interesting. Yeah. I kind of think I never thought that Joey was being manipulative in that scene. I thought that Steve's read of that was just part of his insecurity poking out. But I mean, it's very possible. Like one of the things I did clock, I love her performance in that scene. I think she's really, really good. This actress that plays Joey, when she laughs in that scene, there's this kind of like desperation in her laugh. Like it's very distinctive. Like it feels like an intentional, this is not just the way the actor laughs. It's like she did something to her laugh to like, it is a laugh that feels like you're barely hanging on. And like sometimes your laugh can reveal something in you in that moment. And it just had there was a lot of desperation in that laugh that I like my ears like really, really picked up on.
Yeah.
I mean, I think definitely like you want to believe the best in her. And even when Steve's like being a jerk to her, she's really not taking the bait and arguing. Like she's patient with him. And like he basically says like, so what's different about this time that you're clean? Like he's interrogating her almost. And she's like, oh no, it's fine. Like I get it. I totally get it. Yeah. Like I understand the definition of insanity stuff. And she gives this, I thought very good speech about, what is recovery actually, and how like it might seem like you're doing the same thing every day, but every day is different and you have to keep going. You have to keep doing it. Like I found that very inspiring myself. So maybe I'm just being fully taken in by a performance as well, but I don't know.
That's I think again, I'm going to return to my favorite word in context of this show, which is ambiguity, because it could be either way. It could be that she's just very earnestly communicating to Steve how she sees her situation and with totally guileless, Or it could be that she's like playing a long game where she's, like, if I can get sympathy with these people, then maybe sometime, I know where they live now. I can come hit them up for some cash, and and you have no idea, and we never will. I will say that so like part of what I'm picking up on, I think, is just the fact that her affect in that scene is different from in almost every other moment. Like she seems pretty normal most of the time in terms of her like emotional range. And then in the dinner scene, she seems very elevated, very big.
Yeah.
Which to me reads as disingenuous, but it could just be that she's nervous, right? But then at the very end of the episode, when Luke mentions that he has money, she makes this big like, oh, that's great, Luke. And it's this big fake looking smile that was super disconcerting. And
that was the moment I knew she was about to burn him. Like right in that moment, it's like, yep, okay.
Me too. And the reason is I connected it back to earlier when it's like, oh, she's acting now. She's performing again.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think like it is completely fair to say that in the dinner scene, she is putting on a performance. Like, I think whether or not it's genuine or not, like, yeah, like you're meeting these people, you're in their big giant house that they got from writing, and like you feel like you're being judged because she is like, right. like Steve is in there, Mr. Judgment. And so you're kind of, I mean, I think what you said, you're kind of playing it up. You're performing the best version of yourself because you feel that judging eye, and you're trying not to give them anything to judge you off of. So it like what I will say is I think that the version of Joey that stood up with Luke as he came down and was suffering with the heroin withdrawal is like, I think that was just a genuine person. And like, this is the thing about people, I mean, about addicts in the context of this conversation, but also people in general, is like, we're complicated, right? Like, she could be a completely sincere, genuine person that genuinely cares about Luke and wants his recovery to go well. But she's also an addict that sometimes needs a fix and is willing to hurt anyone in her life to do that. And it's like the struggle with something like this is like, how could you do this to a person you love? And it's like, well, you see it constantly. Luke did it constantly. He like, I believe Luke loves his family. Maybe not his dad, but he loves his siblings, and he was able to constantly do this to them. And it's, how is that possible? It's like, well, this disease is incredibly powerful, and it will make you do terrible things to the people you genuinely love. And that's the complicated nature of it. And as the person having that done to you, how do you parse that? And how do you believe them then when they say this time it's for real? This time, even if it is, and for Luke it is, right? This he is 90 days clean, and he stays clean throughout this entire episode. And the last thing he says to Steve at the end of the episode, well, the last thing he says is it wasn't suicide, but one thing she says when Steve walks up to him is like, I'm so cold, I don't know what's going on, my body's so stiff, but I feel like I'm suffering from withdrawals, but I didn't use. You believe me, don't you, Steve? And Steve gives him a look. And the part of the look is pity because Nell is dead. But the other part of the look is like, no, I don't.
Right, of course not.
Yeah. And why should I?
Yeah. Yeah. The talking about the disease of addiction and how it can take someone who does have a really good heart and it can kind of turn them into a Jekyll Hyde character where they can also do horrible, horrible things.
Yeah.
I think we said something like this a second ago, but like when they're your sibling, I don't know that you can just choose not to care about them anymore, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm lucky that I've never had to be in quite that situation or anything particularly like it, but there are people who just have the ability to just kind of hurt you forever.
Yeah.
If they're in that position. And the reason I phrase it that way is this story is actually kind of an interesting collection of ways that a family can hurt each other forever. You know, you have a mother who committed suicide. The kids they've never gotten over this, and they never will.
Yeah.
It's
Well, they have no opportunity for closure because their
yeah,
dad won't tell them what happened. And then, yeah, it's like, I don't know if you could ever really get over losing your mother and losing your mother like that. So,
right.
yeah.
And they emphasize, like, it's not just that she's dead, but it's that she died in a way that was sort of a betrayal on top of a loss, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got a sibling who's an addict, it largely due to the loss of the mother, but now he is causing this constant, source of pain. We've seen this in the previous episodes where, like, you see that the other characters, it's not that they don't think about Luke, it's not that they don't care about Luke, it's that they're just constantly hurt by Luke.
Yeah.
And if they could switch flick a switch in their brain to turn off their love for Luke, maybe they would, but they can't. So I feel like that, there's this is slightly, I don't know. I was going to try to bring in, like, Steve and his broken marriage to this, or like the fact that their dad is estranged from them, and again, like you said, because he refuses to communicate with them clearly, it's just this sort of like, an estrangement that's built out of just misunderstanding is one thing. An estrangement that's built out of one party just being stubborn is far more painful. And I have seen this sort of, not, what's the word for someone close to me has experienced this, where it's like just a sort of endless source of pain that a person won't just get over themselves and just move past something. I don't know. I'm being vague to the point of being useless here, but, like, there's a lot of stuff here in this show that I think lines up with this.
Yeah. I mean, I think this kind of moves into what I wanted to talk about next perfectly, but I think one of the things that demonstrates exactly what we're talking about here the most clearly is the twin thing, right? This connection, this supernatural connection between Luke and Nellie that exists. So he breaks his foot, she feels the pain. She dies, his neck hurts, he feels the cold, he feels the rigor mortis set in. He's scared, she's scared. He's happy, she's happy. What do you think being addicted to heroin does to the twin of that person who is sharing your feelings and your emotions and your pains? What does that do to Nellie? I mean, and this is a perfect, like, literalization of the metaphor of how your addiction is destroying the people around you as well, right? Like, we've been told in this story that Nellie has struggled throughout her life, right?
Mm.
And then we see this, and it's like, how much of that was because of Luke? And on the flip side, Nellie's struggles are felt by Luke as well. So how much of his struggles are because of the things that she was going through?
Yeah. How many of his low points are because of something that happened to her? And maybe we'll see that. That's a really interesting point.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think this is this perfect, like, the twin thing is this fun conceit that was kind of teed up in the very first episode of the show. They, like, didn't say it directly, but this is the general question of, like, Luke, why are you up? And he says, because Nellie's up. And we realize that wasn't just a saying. He was saying it's because when she's awake, I'm awake. When she's suffering, I'm suffering. When she's happy, I'm happy. When she's afraid, I'm afraid. And this connection that exists between them. And it does, like, I think especially sting with the idea that, like, Nellie is the one that always believed in me, that like the one, like, my family never believes in me. They never believe me, but Nellie is the one exception to that. She's the exception that makes the rule. She's always believed me. She's always believed in me. And she's the one you hurt the most, both metaphorically and just literally, by when you stick a needle in your arm and shoot up. Like, what does that do to her physically, like, through this connection that they have with them? It's just a like, again, like we talked about this last week, it's just like a great idea. It's like a great idea of, like, how do we represent this? How do we explore this idea of addiction and how it hurts us and the people that love us. And it's like, well, what if we just create a magical connection between them?
Yeah. This makes me even more sure about Theo knowing that he's lying to her, because again, it's taking a real type of relationship, a real dynamic, and adding a little bit of magic to make it, emphasize. I love this a lot. I hope we do something with this in the next episode, assuming it is the Nelly episode.
It might be. You don't know.
I think what we said before is it might also, we might get a Hugh Crain episode.
Yeah, that's true. We have really not focused on Hugh very much at all.
If I had to guess, though, I would guess that we're going to do the Nelly episode, and then if we do a Hugh Crain episode, then that one would come after hers. And the reason is simply like he just has too much information. He's the character who could clear up a lot of our questions, and so we're going to hold him off until we're ready to move on with the climax, more or less.
Yeah. Okay, so just to come clean with you, the title of episode 5 is The Bent Neck Lady. So
okay,
do with that what you will. I do want to kind of go back to the dinner scene a little bit here, because I just want to emphasize, like, once again, just to talk up the actors, Steve's performance in this is so good. When this isn't the scene around the table, this is when Steve and Luke are talking afterwards, and Steve is saying these incredibly asshole but correct things. I love this, the performance of Steve in the scene where Luke goes, "You ever see someone in withdrawal, Steve?" And just the way he goes, "Nope." It's just like, you fucker. Like, he's just like, don't care. Nope.
Yeah.
Haven't seen it. Don't know.
Yep.
Don't care. Like, just like one of the most important line readings of Nope ever. And it's pitch perfect.
Yeah. No, I mean, I totally agree that he's being an asshole, but also, like, from his perspective, he's just like, I'm so sick of this shit.
Yeah. Like, imagine like that his brother just says, "I got a day pass," and comes over, and he's all celebrated to talk because he's a month sober. And it's just like, yeah, I've seen all this before. Like, we've done this. We've probably had this exact same dinner before, where we're celebrating how good you've done. And
yeah,
I don't have time for this anymore. I don't care. I'm done.
One thing I noticed about the dinner scene, which connects to this, is like, while he's sitting there being a massive judgmental asshole at the dinner table, he's like chugging a glass of red wine.
Mm-hmm.
He's like destroying this glass of red wine. And I noticed that as just like, okay, he's first of all hypocritical in like an obvious way, but also just, if we're kind of keeping tabs on like where we are in the timeline, this seems pretty recent.
Yeah.
Recent history. He's still with his wife and he's drinking heavily. Is drinking a big glass of red wine with dinner drinking heavily? I don't know, but I think if you have a character sort of drinking their drink that aggressively, you're trying to communicate like they're being a little problematic with their drinking. Maybe I'm reading too much into that. I don't know.
I mean, no, I don't think you are. Like timeline wise, right? This is 30 days into Luke's 90-day sobriety, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is 2 months in the past. We know from his conversation with Lee earlier in the episode that they split, that Steve moved out of the house a month ago. So 60 days into Luke's sobriety. So we are literally like weeks away from their marriage just completely falling apart. And honestly, we're probably just in the midst of their marriage completely falling apart.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, like glass houses and all, like Steve is not doing well himself.
Yeah. And that's, by the way, and the sort of the third thing I wanted to mention is like maybe half the reason he's being a huge asshole right now is because his life is falling apart and he's in a horrible mood and he's taking it out on Luke. And every single one of them has a pathology and has baggage and has trauma that they are trying to work through. And it's just that Luke's is represented in this
form of addiction, where Steve's takes on a different form, but it's destroying his life. Maybe not exactly the same, but it's destroying his life as well.
Yeah.
So yeah. And we get that little note from Joey of like, what are you going to do now? Like, have kids? And both Lee and Steve look at each other, and this is I think we're meant to clock that this is perhaps part of the reason that their marriage is not active anymore.
Yeah. Right. You know, we're not given a lot of information on that, but it wouldn't surprise me to learn that Steve doesn't want to have kids after his horrible traumatic childhood.
Yeah, Lee wants kids and Steve is uninterested. I think that would be a fair guess to make. Yeah, like, because again, like none of the Crain have children besides Shirley, right?
Yeah, and she seems to have a poor relationship with hers.
Yeah.
So
yeah. All really, really great stuff that the show is just kind of doing in the background of all this. Like this is what I love. Like we've talked about this from the very beginning, like this idea of perspectives and the idea of shifting perspectives. And what I love about the show is that it's not so easy as just like, as you said, like, this is the Luke episode and we're somewhere on Luke's team. It's like, this is the Luke episode, and so we see things from Luke's perspective, but just the fact that we've already done a Steve episode allows us to see things from Steve's perspective. And so we bring to every single scene every perspective we've had so far. And so, yeah, you might originally leave the scene feeling a certain way, but then you think about it for half a minute and you're like, well, I mean, I have a lot of sympathy for Steve. I really do. Like, is he a giant asshole? Yes, 100%. But he is a failed writer who mortgaged his family to for success.
Uh-huh.
And it worked. And now he has to live with that. And he's obviously like carrying, along with everything else he's carrying, he's now carrying that. He's carrying the fact that so many members of his family resent him, despite the fact that one of them is taking the money he offers anyway and still resenting him. But all of that is like festering inside of him constantly.
Yeah. Yeah. I really wonder, once we rotate through all of our characters, what are we going to do with this specific idea of like playing with who we feel sympathy for,
Yeah.
And I know you know the answer to this because you've watched it, but I'm just like, are we going to, is it going to become more free floating where, so presumably at some point all the characters come together, but like, does that mean that we still focus on particular characters in a given episode, or is it more of a winding through the characters and are we going to keep playing with this idea of perspective and sympathy?
Yeah.
And that ambiguity, I guess, in terms of how am I supposed to feel about this person?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think one of the big remaining things is Hugh, right? Like the one thing we for certain know is that all of the children seem to hate their father, right? We know they didn't live with their father, right? They were sent to live with their aunt. That's something that I don't know if the show ever specifically said. It was kind of implied in like the first episode that like he was at this custody hearing and could potentially lose custody of his children. It seems like that happened, and they grew up living with their aunt and uncle. And they all hate their father, and maybe we'll get to see from his point of view. Maybe we'll get to understand the events of that night from Hugh's point of view and why he made the decisions he made. And maybe they'll get to see that as well. Like, I think one interesting thing that the show has sort of done, but only a little bit, is we are getting to see these different perspectives. We are getting to see these characters in new light. The characters themselves, for the most part, haven't gotten to experience the thing that we have, right? So if there's going to be any kind of repair of the relationships between the remaining Crain siblings, there's going to have to be some sort of lessons and understanding of each of the context of each of their lives. I think we do get to see it a little bit with Luke in this episode, though, because I do think we are very specifically, like he says in that speech at the end of the thing, is like, what does he say? I think I wrote it down. he says, I guess I'll never know how it felt for them to be done like that, talking about his siblings and what he did to them. I hope I never know. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
now you do a little bit. Like not doing it for years upon years upon years, but I think what he goes through with Joey, this person who he's put so much in, is by the language of the show supposed to be representative of what he has done to his family. And so maybe he has gained a little bit a new perspective of truly understanding why they have such trouble believing him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is in a sense, a shock to his worldview. Like we said, close to the top of the episode, for him, not having faith in someone, not believing in someone is sort of confusing and painful. And now he's in this position where he's like, oh, okay, that's what happened. This is what it feels like when you trust someone, you believe in someone, and they betray you.
Yeah. And I think like the beat he says at the end of the episode of I couldn't help her, he says this over and over again. I think that's important too, is I think you said this is like, you can't help people that won't help themselves. And like this idea that like maybe on some level he blames his family for not being there for him enough. And it's like, Luke, like they can only be there for you so far. Like you have to do this yourself. You have to want to do this. And maybe like I couldn't help her, realizing that like there was nothing I could do. Like I think that's like his whole day is she leaves and he's like, I have to help her. I can help her. Like I am going to be the person for her that my family was not for me.
Yep.
And in doing so, I will save her in a way that they did not save me. And the lesson is that no, you can't.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it, right? This is an important lesson for him to learn. We'll see what he does with it.
Yeah. I also like that he interprets the ghost of Nell visiting him, if that was Nell's ghost, when he wakes up at night and she says go, he interprets that as go help. And I don't know if it's clear that that's what Nell was meaning in that moment. It's like, go, yes, leave rehab and help Joey.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm pretty sure that she wasn't. It's interesting because Nellie's ghost seems to be trying to communicate something to both, first Steve and then Luke. Actually, chronologically, first Luke and then Steve.
Yeah.
But seems to be unable to clearly communicate, right? I mean, because she's a ghost. But what she's trying to communicate, we're not sure. I mean, for all we know, she's trying to communicate, stay away from the house. And the house itself is trying to communicate, come home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she's trying to say, the opposite of come home, like, go away. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like we have two ghosts that visit Luke in the course of this episode, and one says come and the other says go. So yeah. I think that's a fair conclusion to make for sure.
Yeah.
I do like, we could talk about some of the direction here. Like one thing I loved, and for some reason it took me until the third episode or the third time through the episode to realize it, is everything after Luke leaves rehab and he's outside at night, like the color correction of those scenes is like really interesting. So it's like, it's super sepia toned. It's like they literally drained as much of the color out of the world as they possibly could. And I don't know. I was really, really into that once I realized it. I was like, wow, it is like, where's all the colors?
Yeah, it's a really depressing existence, I think, is what we're communicating there. Yeah, it's funny. I didn't notice it at the time, but now that you pointed out, I also feel like when it's nighttime, there's this like oppressive harshness to the lighting, It almost feels like underexposed, like on purpose,
Sure.
Because we've talked many times about Flanagan being extremely, precise about the way he shoots darkness. But when he's like, when it's Luke on the streets, it's a different vibe. It's not like this is a dark house and it's scary. It's like, this is an unpleasant, underlit reality that he is bumbling his way through.
Yeah. It's all good. I love the way this is shot. One of the, like, we kind of moved off the bowler hat scene before I finished talking about it, but like it's like this camera trick that like everyone that makes horror movies does. So like I'm not going to say this is like a Flanaganism, but like the idea that the camera intentionally doesn't show you other parts of the room, like in my absolute terror at watching the scene, there's one thing that happens in the scene where Luke is, he goes, opens the door to his room, looks outside, he sees the tall man like with the cane right there, slowly walking into another room. He backs back into his room and shuts the door, and he's back in his room, and then like the camera is like almost intentionally not showing us what the back half of his room looks like we're focused on Luke, we're not seeing that. And then Flanagan does this really clever thing where he pans the camera just a little bit, and what it does is it pushes Luke out of the center of the frame and moves him to frame left, and then puts empty space in frame right. And the logic of cinema that everyone has watched movies has said, when you do a move like that, it's because you're preparing for something to enter that side of the frame. And of course that doesn't happen, but like your brain clocks it, and you're just like, oh, something's about to burst into the frame. Like something's about to burst in the frame from frame right. He goes, he sees the man walking through the room, he shuts his door, and he back pedals, and then suddenly the dude's in the room already because it's a ghost. He can do whatever the fuck he wants. And that's kind of what you're prepared for. And that scared the shit out of me because I was just like ready for it to happen. I don't even know if that was like an intentional move, but it's what is created by the scene. And just like, what, like, just freaky show, man. This is a really scary sequence.
Yeah, I was gonna remark on how I like that there aren't really jump scares. Like we've talked about this, I think, pretty consistently, that like the scary stuff in the show is like raising your hackles, creepy, dreadful, scary. It's never really jump scare scary. Even the things that we've kind of called like borderline jump scares, it's like, well, they're not. They're just not. Like, they don't have the musical sting that you associate with a jump scare. The camera kind of cheats to let you know it's about to happen anyway, so it doesn't catch you off guard. And the point being, like, this is way more pleasant for me. So like when I say that I don't like scary movies, I think like 50% of what I mean is it's just physically unpleasant to be like tense, waiting for something to happen for, an arbitrary length of time. It's just not fun. It's like I'm not enjoying just being physically tense. Whereas this show, I'm very rarely, if ever, like bracing for something to happen. I can be having all kinds of emotional reactions to what's happening on the screen, and be scared, but not scared in the way where I'm like, again, physically tense and bracing for something. And I think I like that a lot. Like, that's way. If all horror was like this, I would have much less of a problem with horror.
Yeah, and for me, like, I just think that the scares that I remember are the things that are this lasting feeling of discomfort and dread and hair standing up, as you're describing it. Like, is it true that I think I don't even know if we'll call it, but like in the Theo episode, the one big jump scare that happened is when she wakes up right before Nell dies, and Mr. Smiley is standing at the foot of her bed, and we kind of do the big sting loud noise jump scare thing. And like, did I jump in that moment? Yeah, I sure did. I jumped. But like, I don't remember that. Like, even thinking when we had our previous conversation about how much the show has scared me, like, that is not a thing that popped into my head thinking of when I was scared by the show. But like, the entire scene with the bowler hat man, the moment with Nellie's ghost in the first episode, these are things that I remember because I remember the fear. Even like watching like some of the first horror movies I ever watched, like, I just remember the movie Halloween, which has a few jump scares. It just not as much because they just didn't shoot movies like that in the 70s. But like, the first time I watched Halloween, what I remember is the fact that there's never a release. Like, once the the scary stuff starts happening, it just doesn't stop happening, and it just I just remember the experience of watching this movie and realizing it was called Halloween and being like, oh, so it's all like one night, so there's never like a moment where we cut to daytime again and everyone's happy and then we build to another tense. No, it just keeps going and going and going. And as a young kid watching this for the first time, I was incredibly afraid of that, and I will never forget that feeling and that experience. And that had nothing to do with slow buildup of tension to something leaps into frame and a loud noise is played. It was just the tension and the fear of the sequence, and that is, I think, what Flanagan does best. And I'm not not a fan of like the occasional like bah, like I'm fine with it. I think it's overly relied on, and it's never the scare that I remember.
It's a good way of saying it.
Yeah. Speaking of which, the woman that's in the reflection of the microphone, I don't even call that a jump scare because she's there. Like, we just don't really, like, you see something in the reflection because on the left side of the reflection is Luke, right? So you see Luke, little Luke with his adorable Coke bottle glasses. And then on the right side, you see something else. And you're just like, what is that?
Yeah.
And then it's not until it moves that you're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, like, there's a musical sting in that. So it's closer to a jump scare than like the bowler hat guy stuff. But she's in frame the entire time. She's just there. It's just you don't fully realize it right away.
Yeah. I think I had more of a, chills reaction than a startlement reaction to that too.
Yeah.
So.
And maybe like the best case scenario is you recognize, oh, that's a person. And Luke just hasn't seen her yet. And then, then you're getting the hair raising thing because you're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah. It's the there was a man in the corner moment.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh, that's good shit, man. Anything else you wanted to say about the episode? I feel like we're coming up on the end here.
Yeah.
Is it time for list of things we like?
Yeah, I think list of things we like time.
We need to officially name this section. The buttons going down the tube, I thought was really effective. Just like, again, I think what is happening to me is I'm listening. The majority of the time I'm watching the show, it's with headphone, like noise canceling earbuds in, and so I'm hearing like the mix of the sound a lot more acutely than I perhaps would if I was just watching in my living room. But like the sound of the button going down the tube and then dropping into the bowler hat, and this very distinct sound when it like hits the bowler hat and bounces around. I thought the sounds were really, really like emphasized, and to the point where the last one drops out and then hits the ground. Like, it's just like this perfect end of a 3-beat of how the fuck did that happen?
Yeah.
Why did that happen?
Right. And it's not like that immediately leads to anything in that exact moment. So it's just creepy.
Yeah.
It's just the kind of thing.
You hear an old lady voice coming out of the thing calling for Clara, I think it was.
That's true.
Yeah. But yeah, like, it's not like now there's suddenly a ghost.
It's creepy of it in and of itself, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You got any list of stuff things?
I think that I keep mentally returning to everything we do with Joey in this story. I think I just found it like really effective and heartbreaking when she pickpockets him, because I was 100,000,000% sure that that's what was happening in that scene.
Yeah.
And the fact that it takes Luke so long to figure it out is like just sad, right? And it's it was just, I don't know, just we didn't talk much about that. It's just a heartbreaking moment.
No, I completely agree. It's so sad. It's so very sad. And yeah, the show allows us to see it coming. And that is like, again, perfect management of, through performance, through direction, through writing. It's like the objective of the scene is that the audience recognizes what's happening before Luke recognizes it. Like that is what the scene wants to do. Yeah. And I think that is tricky, right? Because you need to reveal enough information that the audience groks this without making it so ridiculously obvious that like it becomes unbelievable that the character wouldn't make the same thing. But yeah, like the second she's like, "Oh, good, Luke, good work," it's just like, "Oh, fuck,
Yeah.
here we go,
Right.
here we go." And then they're both walking down the street, and she's clearly just like thinking. You can see it in the actor's performance. It's like, how can I get this money from him? How can I handle the situation? What can I do here? Oh, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. I think his reaction to even to her kissing him is partly just like maybe he even knows like when he says, "What are you doing?" Part of that I think is even like, no, you can't be doing this to me. Like he doesn't quite know that he's been pickpocketed yet, but I think he knows like something's going real sideways on me here. I don't know. There's so much subtlety to the performances in this episode. You could just, I don't know. You could just endlessly watch them over and over and find new details.
Yeah, I mean, that was some of the joy of just rewatching, in prep for this episode. And I agree with you. The performances across the board, just excellent.
Awesome.
Everyone's doing good work. We should have talked a little bit more about, where are their names? I just had them and then I lost them. Oliver Jackson Cohen, who plays the adult Luke, I think does a fantastic job. I think, one thing we talked about last week, or maybe it was in the week before, it's all running together on me now, but just how well the child and adult actors were kind of channeling each other in their performances. I think Luke is kind of the one exception of that to me. And like I don't see a lot of the adorable Coke bottle glasses Julian Hilliard in Oliver Jackson Cohen's performance, but like I don't think that matters because it feels like he's just been through so much shit.
Yeah,
that version of him is just kind of gone now.
Yeah, and maybe we'll see some of it at some later point in the show. But I agree that he's just this grizzled old man, aged beyond his years. He just has nothing in common with that kid anymore.
Mm-hmm. I really like how they did his facial hair, where like he's got the beard, but like it's growing like all the way down his neck to the point where, like, oh, this is just completely unkempt. And that's even when he's like got his shit together and looking good. Just the way the character plays him, and like the challenge of playing him in this slowly, steadily increasing effects of rigor mortis that he's feeling and not understanding is just really effective, because he kind of has to constantly be cold and jittery, and like, I mean, it's like the direction was probably just like, hey, just play it like you're a junkie that's going through withdrawal. Just like that's how you play the character. Just play it fully like that, and it's going to map perfectly to what feeling death must be like.
Yeah, I think you're right. And yeah, metaphor. Love it.
Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out a way of asking this question without revealing it. Like, Nell's method of suicide feels like the show has told it to us at this point, right?
Yeah. I think she hanged herself.
Okay. Yeah.
Although I also think that maybe she didn't hang herself. Maybe.
Well, that's what Luke seems very convinced of knowing at the end of the episode, right? It wasn't suicide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how exactly? I mean, that's the biggest mystery of the show is like, why did she go back to the house? Why did she, if it's true that one of the ghosts killed her, like, why did she go into the house where the ghost could get her in the first place?
Yeah. The show is talked around Nell and the problems that Nell has had throughout her life, but not really focused on any of them. And again, I think very intentional, because it was saving it for what happens next. But we know very little of that stuff. Like we said, we know she at one point got married. We have not seen, like, no one. I'll say no one has said, like, it's not Arthur that calls anyone to say that Nell is dead, right? Like,
yeah,
we don't know where Arthur is in this. We know they got married a couple years ago, and now we know nothing.
Yeah. I mean, there are some interesting scenes in that first episode where we kind of see where she is calling people from. Yeah. And it's like a hotel room and her car, and like, it's not much to make of it, but she's alone.
She's traveling
Yeah.
to Hill House because I think
Yeah.
she's supposed to be in LA, but she flies or drives. I don't know. She gets back to the East Coast, and lot to figure out there. I think one thing that I said we were going to do and we didn't do was go back to the counting to 7 thing. That we see one of like Luke's methods of dealing with his fear is he invents this game where he puts 7 objects together and counts them one by one, and the 7 objects represent him and his family. And so it's basically Luke like channeling strength from the 7 that is his family. We see it again. Flanagan does this thing where we see it at the very beginning of the episode, where he's stacking 7 army men, all pointing towards the basement ghost, and we don't really know what to make of that. And it's again the thing, like the slow setup payoff thing that Flanagan is doing, where he shows us something that we can make zero sense of whatsoever, and then we get to see what that means much later in the story, where he teaches Nellie that same trick with I thought it was buttons, but they looked like rocks, so I don't know.
Yeah,
I think he opens the button. He takes out the button box that she found in order to do that counting. So
I don't know. Yeah.
But we see, like, even as an adult, that's a thing he still does, right? He's pacing and counting to 7 over and over again. And I think it, like, for Luke's kind of idea of the way he gathers strength is to count his family, kind of breaks your heart in that he's been so through a lot of his own choices, been so separate and rejected by his entire family, right? Like if the strength is in 7, well, you lost one of those when you were 6 years old, and then the rest of them have separated from you, and now we definitely lost another one in Nell's death. So
yeah,
the power of 7 is dwindling for sure.
Yeah. Well, there's also the more immediate, irony of like his coping mechanism was the idea that, like, I can rely on my family, and then he basically alienated all of them. So you can't rely on them at all.
One other thing I wanted to point out that I thought was interesting, and I'm not even sure what we can make of it, but when they are going to Lee's house to talk to Lee, what Luke says to Joey is, when we get there, just hang back, okay? She'll know. She always fucking knows. And I thought that was really interesting because, first of all, Luke doesn't know that Steve has moved out, right? He's going to knock on the door of what he thinks is Steve and Lee's house to ask Steve for money. But he's talking about Lee here, I'm assuming, when he says she, because who else could it be at this house? Like,
right.
He knows Lee's there. He doesn't know that Steve's not there. But, like, I think that's just a really interesting. Is there a background to that? Is there background to, like, Lee is more? I just don't know what to make of that whatsoever.
Yeah, is she more sensitive to this kind of thing, or I don't know. I do. It is compelling enough to make me think, like, does Lee also have a little bit of the touch? But I mean, it's very minor. I agree. It was a line that stuck out a bit.
Yeah, I had to rewind and, like, watch it multiple times because, like, I think I didn't hear the she first, and I just assumed we were talking about Steve because of course we would. Yeah, like, that just seems like the obvious thing, but no, it's not. So really interesting stuff there. The other thing I just wanted to point out, we've talked about how mean Steve was to Luke and how it pissed off Luke, and he leaves that scene storming out saying "fuck you," and we do the perfect transition that the show has done so many times, with the door kick. But one thing that I really loved is he clearly still loves his brother and is desperate for his brother's approval. Like, early in the episode when he's about to go to bed and the caseworker says, "Oh, by the way, your brother called earlier." The line read, talk about good performances. The line read from Oliver Jackson Cohen in that moment is, "Steve called?" And I can't do it justice, but, like, the edge of, like, hope and oh my God, is like so present there
Yeah.
that like, and then immediately it's like, yeah, he just wanted to know if you were rehab. And it's immediately like, oh yeah, figures. But
Yeah.
like he had just this, like he clearly wants his brother's approval. I mean, that's probably why he like, did he have dinner with any of his other family when he reached 30 days? No, he didn't. He wanted like Steve. He wanted Steve to see. Like it goes back to the very first episode when Steve is in the treehouse with him, and she's like Luke and Stevie. You know, like Luke and Stevie, always a team.
Yeah, the two brothers.
Yeah,
A real bond there, and I think they both, you know, are sad that the bond is broken, but they both, you know, it's they can't just unilaterally fix it. So
yeah,
it's sad. Yeah.
It is really sad. And I think that exhausts my list of stuff I liked.
Okay.
So
I think that's,
if you have nothing, we can now finally end the episode.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, that is episode 4, The Twin Thing. As I said, next week is episode 5, The Bent Neck Lady. We can make some assumptions on who the focal point of that episode will be, but you never know. You never know. This is a big one, Matt. Just looking at the time on this episode is an hour and 10 minutes. Most of the episodes have been 50, 52. So we're going to spend a little bit more time with this one. So prepare for our episode to be even longer than they normally are, but I'm excited to get to this one with you.
Me too. All right,
discussion question time. I think, Matt, that this might have been the question that got the most responses
of all time,
out of any question we've asked on this show so far.
Yeah, certainly this show. It's close to a high answer count even for any show ever.
I made the joke at the beginning, but I sometimes worry, like, I have these worries, like, are we asking questions that are too personal? And then I just need to stop myself and be like, well, they don't have to answer them.
Yeah.
Like, if there's a person out there that says, oh, that's too personal, they just won't answer. And I guess the thing that we got here, Matt, is people are completely fine talking about their feelings on embalming, on death, on open caskets, on funerals, on arrangements for their remains.
That's right.
People have a lot of thoughts about them.
They sure do.
Yeah. So thank you for everyone who sent these in. Obviously, we're not going to be able to read all of them because there were so many.
Yeah. So just to remind everyone, the question was, how do you feel about open caskets and burial and so forth? Big Ange says, how do I feel about the embalming process and open casket? As a Southern born and raised, I am all too familiar with open casket funeral. I've always felt it was one's last social appearance, subject to the scrutiny, critique, and whispers associated with every big event here in the South. An opportunity for looky-loos to walk by your casket and comment on how lifelike you look or how badly your makeup or hair has been done. I have heard too many times she looks like she could sit up and talk to us, and also she would never wear her hair like that. I also have the perspective of a preacher's kid and a beautician's daughter. My dad was praying corpses into heaven, and my mom was teasing their hair so Jesus recognized them. Higher the hair, closer to Jesus. I accompanied my mom to do the hair of a newly deceased customer as a child. I have seen the cold bodies on the metal table with dried blood in the gutters around it. I am also a nurse practitioner and spent my early years as an RN working in a neuro ICU. Post-mortem care was a weekly task. Having experienced this in my 54 years, I have very detailed instructions notarized for my cremation. Until Scott and Matt's discussion on cremation versus burial, I left the home of my ashy remains in the literal hands of my children. But now I do think I will have my ashes buried so those who love me and want to remember me have a place to visit. And also to avoid a debacle that Donnie's ashes faced in The Big Lebowski. Yeah.
Cool.
That makes sense. It does. I think it does make sense to have a place associated with your burial. That's the one. That was like the one thing about burial that we came up with in that last conversation.
Yeah. Next we have Sugar Shillelagh. Is that how you spell Shillelagh?
I don't know.
I don't know. Well, anyway, they say, oh, my sweet baby Jesus, the fact that I spent 5 minutes screaming phylactery in my office until Scott won his first vocabulary point has to be one of the funniest things that has happened since I started listening to you guys. I agree.
Yeah. Scott, I had the option of deleting that whole bit there, but I left it in just so you could have another victory lap.
Thank you so much. Give that lich a phylactery. Liches love phylacteries. I could have seized and dized you too. I agree. Wonderful. My favorite moment of the show ever.
That was great.
The 10 years of podcasting, and that's the moment right there.
Yeah.
Anyway, they say their answer is, my aunt died in a horrific car accident when I was 11. I went up to look at her. They had to put so much makeup on her that her freckles were covered, and it devastated me. Weirdest detail, but they were a defining feature. I don't think open caskets are bad per se, but I don't think my family needs to see me like that. I want to be burned, and then when I'm all burned up and put into some whimsical container, I want to be taken to the bar, preferably one with a jukebox where they all have to listen to Just Like Heaven with me for the billionth time. I want people to go full speaker for the dead and tell stories about me honestly one last time before they change the stories to make me saintly. That always happens whether people mean to or not. Then whoever wants the burned up me can have it and do whatever helps them best cope. It's a good answer.
Love it. I never read
I watched
Speaker.
an episode of Poker Face, the Ryan Johnson Murder of the Week show, and there's an episode that takes place in a funeral home. It came out just last week, ironically, and there's one thing you can do with the cremains in that show, which is press them into a record. So you can do like a record of their favorite song. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. That's like a more practical object.
Yeah.
That's something to consider.
Also, I hate the phrase cremains.
Yeah.
Like I know it's what we say, but it seems too whimsical.
Yeah, it's like a marketing word.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't like it.
It sounds disrespectful.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Satyal T says, speaking from a UK perspective, embalming is rare to the point of not being a thing. I would go so far as to call the practice of chemically embalming an oddity I think of as being exclusively done in the US. I've got a lot of thoughts about it, and I feel it comes down to wish to live or last forever, which I find a bit sad. I think we need to become okay with knowing we need to vacate this space for the next generations, like everything else on the planet does. Speak for yourself. So, speaking from a UK South Asian perspective, open caskets, absolutely, with an emphasis on funerals happening quite soon after death, and refrigeration to hold bodies till the funeral can happen. I grew up going to viewings and never learned to find it weird until my mom died during COVID and we couldn't do one. I did go and see her, and to be honest, if I could take it back, I would. I watched her get sick and die and then had to see her that way. Was like, what is this for? I already knew she was dead. We fear death, and I think that's natural. But when we try so hard to fix it, that it becomes way grosser than it needs to be. When I die, I want to be left on a cliff for the birds to eat and the animals to profit from. That doesn't seem to be an option. I guess we don't really have the space here to leave corpses lying about. But I don't think we would if we could. Being human in this era seems to be about not realizing our place in the world and the cycle of life. Throw me in a paper bag and let me feed the world.
Yeah, I don't think they'll let you do that, but I like it.
Yeah. I mean, if we're considering, like, I believe there have been historical burial practices that may still exist today where they just put your body up on like a high wooden tower and let the birds have at it. I think that's a real thing. Yeah.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
I think any and every form of this has been done at some point in history.
Right.
Apocalypse Win 7 says, I've always been strongly opposed to open casket funerals. I thought they were creepy and unnecessary and borderline disrespectful. But my opinion has become more nuanced after seeing my dad die after an extended bout of cancer. He physically changed a lot over the course of the illness, but even so, when I was brought back into the hospital room after he died, he looked very different. He wasn't sleeping or resting. He was unquestionably dead. It's hard to put into words what a dead person looks like until you see it for yourself. It took me many months to recover from seeing him this way. Even when I tried to replace that image by looking at an old photo of him, it was a very long time until I could remember him as the vital man I knew all my life. My dad was cremated, which I ultimately think is for the best. Looking back years later, I think an open casket funeral would have been a huge mistake. But at the time, would I have liked to have one last glimpse of him as he once was? I can understand the impulse. Yeah, me too. Yeah. I think that is close to how I feel, is that like I don't want to do it for myself. But I do understand why people would want, and maybe in some cases need that.
Yeah. You know, we joke a lot because we're trying to sort of I don't know, gallows humor about this whole thing.
Yeah.
And we were really hard on Shirley, and Shirley is a character who I think is taking this to a pathologically excessive degree. But I never really meant to undermine the idea that there's some value in this practice for some people in some situations.
Yeah.
Cool. Social Twerk says, "Hi Matt, hi Scott. One of my favorite episodes of this podcast, as well as the show itself. Thank you. That was I thought that was a great episode too. As far as embalming goes, there's plenty of reasons why it's bad for the environment as well as the morticians themselves. There is very much a correlation between elevated risks of certain cancers as well as myeloid leukemia and ALS for those in that line of work. I'd much rather recommend water cremation or a natural burial to families. I'm a hospice social worker. Some choose to go the old school way of an open casket, and I don't have an opinion one way or another. If it's a closure thing, okay. If it's done for religious purposes, fine. I personally don't love it, but if it's something the living find important to do, the dead aren't going to come back and say otherwise. They may have even specified this wish to their family in the living will. Everyone's different, even in death. And you're not kidding about how expensive it is to be dead either. I've seen it all. Composted bodies, stones made from ashes, pine boxes to 5-figure caskets. Either way you slice it, they're dead and they didn't get out of this life without spending money. Thank you for all your hard work. I listen to your podcast while driving to see patients, and it always makes me smile." Well, thank you, Social Twerk. Appreciate this answer and the compliments.
I didn't know about elevated risk of cancer for morticians. That's awful. I mean, I guess it makes sense if you're just around these chemicals constantly.
Yeah.
They probably have fumes. You're probably breathing those fumes in.
Yeah, I wonder, is it mostly just straight up formaldehyde? Because that's not good for you. And I mean, it's probably just whatever room they do that in is probably just a constant cancer bath. So it's a good point. Mm-hmm. It's hard. So I did the thing where I pulled out a brief summary of everyone else's answer that I could pull together. And I'm going to try to go through all these, but it's hard because it's not like I can just read, Casper the Friendly Ghost Dog. Like I have to. So, but like I'm going to try to do a very brief summary. So, Juraxis Eridar Lords says that they want an inexpensive disposal. They think funerals serve the living, not the dead. Baby Can You Dig Your Sam says open caskets are creepy and potentially traumatizing. They prefer organ donation and medical school donation. Busy Dad 82 finds open caskets unnecessary and potentially traumatizing, especially for children. Aqua Lungfish prefers natural disposal, i.e. Viking funeral, tree planting, space disposal. There you go, space disposal. Into the sun specifically.
Yeah.
Brambino 1996 says no open casket, prefers cremation or natural decomposition. Pear Jane wants a picnic table, grave marker, and green burial to feed the soil. Witty Day 1992 fears bodies waking and wants creative scavenger hunt for possessions after death.
Whoa,
that's a great idea. Just scatter my possessions. Queen Becky Book says they prefer environmentally friendly human composting or becoming a tree. A lot of people have mentioned the tree one. That one's starting to grow on me.
How dare you? You cannot look into the camera when you do that. How dare you?
Hobo Demon says they want their body to fertilize a Yopon holly tree, and they criticize standard burial practices. Duran Longbeard says they want a Lord of the Rings style funeral down the Anduin. Yeah, me too. I mean, if I didn't know that was an option. E-Man 9001 doesn't want to be seen as a corpse. They prefer cremation or a weekend at Bernie's adventure, which seems to contradict the first part. OK Row 2424 says they want cremation with their ashes scattered as far as possible. And finally, Bent Westward says they prefer cremation with their ashes shot into space, presumably so they can be cloned by aliens. If I missed anyone, I'm sorry. We got more answers than usual in more places than usual, so something might have slipped through the cracks.
I just thank you everyone for sending those in. I know a lot of you that was very personal, and you talked about your experiences with death and your families, and just want to say we appreciate that a whole bunch. I think it is interesting, Matt, that all of the ones I read, which was I think almost all of them, if not all of them, I don't think there was a single person that went like, nope, yeah, I want to be embalmed. I want an open casket funeral, and then I want my full ass body to be buried in the ground in a nice expensive coffin. So I mean, like, I don't want to draw too much conclusions from this because this is not statistical sampling at all of the population. This is a very select group of people, but I just found that interesting that, like, I feel like a lot of these things that we see in this episode maybe just over the next few generations kind of disappear, and we just kind of stop doing things that way.
Yeah. Did we ever say in the course of that discussion that, like, the reason for it is like the belief in the literal resurrection when Jesus returns, and that like everyone will just like stand up from wherever they died and be like, I'm back. Jesus is, and like being embalmed means that you actually will kind of look like yourself, and that's the reason.
That's a wild interpretation of the second coming of Christ.
This is what I've always heard, is like that's why you're not supposed to like chop somebody's head off and then bury them, because then when Jesus resurrects them, their head will be really far away.
I just like I'm not saying you're wrong. I fully believe that that's exactly what people felt, but I'm just imagining reading the New Testament, and that's what you take away from it is like, oh, our bodies are going to be literally resurrected, and oops, Jeff doesn't have a head anymore. Guess he's just going to be headless Jeff in heaven forever.
Yeah, your reaction is causing me to wonder why I was so credulous in believing this, but it's at least plausible that like a person who believes they're going to be resurrected would believe that they're going to be like physically like resurrected, like come back to life, meaning
I mean
their body.
The man who paved the way was physically resurrected.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there you go.
I don't know, man. I never in none of my Catholic years ever had that interpretation in my head that of when Jesus comes for us all, he's going to come for our physical ground bodies. But yeah, I totally, like, people have believed more absurd things than that. So
yeah, I mean, it definitely does explain why cremation was not favored, because it's like, well, then how's he going to resurrect you?
Yeah, true.
So,
okay. Well, thanks everyone. And I hope you get to die in the way that you want to.
Yeah, everyone, see to your will, I guess.
I haven't actually like decided what I want to do.
Yeah, I
feel like I should do that. We're not getting any younger, Matt.
We're not actually. Yeah.
The thing I don't want to do is make my family spend shit tons of money.
Yeah, I would like to imagine that I would set some money aside for such a thing, but that's the kind of thing that you forget to do until it's too late. So,
oh yeah, just write a check to yourself to your other bank account for when I die. It's not a thing I really want to do.
Right. Just have an envelope full of cash taped to the wall at eye level in front of the door of your house. It says for death.
You wake up every morning and look at it. Is today the day? Huh?
Yeah.
Maybe. Sounds fun.
Yeah.
All right. Matt, what are we asking our listeners next week?
Well, there were a lot of possibilities to go with on this episode, but we decided to go with, what is your favorite awkward dinner scene?
Yeah, I just didn't want to do like a question about like addiction and depiction of addiction. Like, just felt too sad.
Yeah.
Instead, let's talk about hilariously awkward conversations around a dinner table.
That'll be more fun.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe we'll take a break from incredibly personal death talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in honor of the Steve's horrible dinner party, what was your favorite awkward dinner scene?
That's right.
All right, that is it for us this week. As we said, next week, episode 5. Next week, we hit the halfway point, Matt. I can't believe it. I actually just can't believe it that we're almost halfway done with the show already.
Me too. I am very excited.
Yeah. But episode 5, The Bent Neck Lady, is next week.
That's right. Remember, you can reach us via email at flanaganswakepod@gmail.com, over on Twitter at flanagan'swake19, on Instagram at doofmedia, on Blue Sky at flanagan'swakepod, and the best place to answer that discussion question, because it makes it easier for me to collect all of them, is the subreddit at reddit.com/r/doofmedia, and you'll just be able to find the thread associated with this episode on the front page. Also, don't forget that you can find every single episode on YouTube, and you can see all our little wacky hand gestures and the times that I awkwardly look into the camera. Those are all right there for you on YouTube.
I'm just going to stare at the camera for the rest. Oh, well, I have to be in the mic and stare at the camera at the same. This doesn't really work.
It doesn't really work. You're right.
I don't like this. I'm not even having to look at it, and I don't like it. If you want to support us through some merchandising, you can head on over to doofmedia.myshopify.com for all of the latest merchandise. We have Ghost Bear, we have Nellie's in the Red Room, we have a bunch of Hill House related merch right now, a bunch of Flanagan's Wake, and then a bunch of just Doof Media merch in general. So check it out. I think there's something for everyone over there. We hope you folks that have purchased any of that stuff are enjoying it. It's doofmedia.myshopify.com.
That's right. If you like any of our shows and you would like to support us, then please consider donating to our Patreon account at patreon.com/doofmedia. Huge backlog of great content over there on the bonus podcast feed to check out.
Yeah. If you cannot afford to donate to us on Patreon, or purchase any merch, that's absolutely okay with us. There's still tons of ways to help. You can share this, like Hill House halfway through. Please share it. Please share it with people. I'm really enjoying. I'm very proud of the episodes we put out so far, and I think people are going to really like it. So make sure, if you haven't shared it with your Flanagan loving friends, to do so right now, right this very minute.
Now is the time.
Also, please help us out by leaving rating and reviews on any platform that has a rating and review service. This week's Spotlight review comes from Audible. It comes from Max C on Audible, who says 15 stars. I think that's how many you can give on Audible. He's not being, I think you can just give 15 on Audible. Okay.
Got it.
Max says, Scott and Matt are back with his outstanding follow-up to Kingslingers. Their thoughtful analysis and years of chemistry are the perfect combination for this deep dive into the career and works of Mike Flanagan. Looking forward to the OG Kingslingers throwback as we read through Gerald's game together over the next several weeks. Well, that obviously is a review from several weeks ago, but thank you, Mac, and thank you everyone who continues to send those in. We really do appreciate. They really do help. I was randomly tagged on Twitter on some list of the best fantasy podcasts. Were you tagged in that?
I was.
And we were on there for
Kingslingers,
not for this. I don't know how legit this list was, but I think part of the algorithm for the list was number of reviews.
Oh.
So all that to be said, reviews matter and they do help. So if you have time, please take the time to do so.
Yeah, thanks for helping get on the Twitter top something list.
The best 100 high fantasy podcasts.
Yeah.
I don't think the Dark Tower is high fantasy.
No,
but we're number 24 on the list.
Sure, I'll take it. Yeah.
And thank you everyone who helped us put us there. And maybe we can get on the list of the 100 best Mike Flanagan podcasts. I think we can make that list. I
hope so.
All right, folks, we'll see you right back here next week for episode 5, The Bent Neck Lady. Until then, rest in peace, Mr. Flanagan. Do you think his wake is open? In the context of the show, is he having an open casket wake?
Definitely always visualize that. Yeah.
I have to. Yeah. In fact, there was a brief moment where we thought the show art would be Mike Flanagan in a casket. And then we decided not to do that.
It's in poor taste.
Yeah.
Which we would,
unlike the joke we make at
right.
the end of every episode, which is in the highest
right.
taste.
All of our jokes are in good taste always.
Yep.